Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. It's that time of year again. Time to look back to the past. Well, January. It's time to look back to 6 months ago and see what I predicted would happen in the 2024 Formula E Championship. Will I make a fool of myself once again? Remember when I said Antonio Felix da Costa would finish 17th only for him to win the championship? Or when I said Sebastian Buemi would win a second championship and he finished 21st. That's what this series has done to me in the past. So what will my predictions look like in 2024? One thing I'm doing differently this year is instead of counting each one I got right, I will count the places I was wrong by. For example, if I said 15th and they finished 16th, that would be 1 point. If I said 1st and they finished 22nd, that would be 21 points. The goal is to keep the number as low as possible. Also, I'm going to ignore drivers who stepped in for a couple of races, just for the sake of simplicity. There were a lot this year, but obviously I didn't account for them in my prediction video. With all that out of the way, place your bets and let's jump into the video.
11th, ERT, with Sergio Sette Camara 22nd and Dan Ticktum 18th. I think they'll go back down to last this year. Now, whilst they have completely rebranded, their driver lineup remains the same. Sergio Sette Camara is not a terrible driver by any means, but he doesn't tend to score a lot of points, so I think he will drag the team down to last. Whilst Dan Ticktum, I think, is a very good driver. He'll do as best he can in the car provided, but I almost think this is an audition for him to get a job at a better team in Formula E, and so he'll finish a few places ahead of Sergio Sette Camara, but I don't see either driver scoring more than maybe 15-20 points.
ERT did finish 11th, so I got that right at least. Sergio Sette Camara did score less points than Dan Ticktum, and they didn't score more than 20 points each. I got the essence completely right, but I was 1 place out for Dan Ticktum and a couple out for Sette Camara. Ticktum only scored points at 1 race. He just managed to get a 4th place in the first race at Misano. Sette Camara actually scored at a few different races. So that is 3 points in the negative, but that's not a bad start. I have a good feeling that my predictions in 2024 are actually going to be very, very good.
10th, Nissan, with Oliver Rowland 21st and Sasha Fenestraz 15th.
Now for goodness sake.
Rowland has actually been around in Formula E for a very long time, and he has put in some very decent performances, but Nissan are not the team they once were. Oliver Rowland and Sasha Fenestraz are not terrible drivers, but they are pretty mediocre. Fenestraz put in some very special performances last year and was incredibly unlucky. He got taken out more times than I can count, but I don't see either driver really excelling. I think there'll be a couple of times you'll see them in the top 5, but I think that's generally you're going to see them fighting for the lower half of the points.
Nissan had their best season since 2020, which was a major blow for me, as I predicted they'd be as competent as a Nissan Sunny at Le Mans. Oliver Rowland 21st, he was 4th. He got 2 wins and 7 podiums. If he didn't miss Portland through illness, there's a chance he could have been champion. This was my annual huge Formula E mistake. I was dead wrong about Oliver Rowland. Sasha Fenestraz was very disappointing. He actually did slightly worse than I thought, but that's 6 for Nissan, 2 for Fenestraz, and 17 for Oliver Rowland. At least it can't get worse.
9th, Abt Cupra, with Nico Muller 20th and Lucas Di Grassi 14th. It's an amazing coup for Abt Cupra to bring back Lucas Di Grassi.
Was it though?
Who of course raced for Abt Audi. Again, during the early days they were a dominant force together, but Abt Cupra is a different kettle of fish. They struggled on their debut year last year, and it's going to be tough again, but I think Lucas Di Grassi will push them forward a little bit. I do think he is a class driver, but he's going to be held back by what's provided for him, and he'll do the best he can, but I think again he's going to be a midfield driver, whilst Nico Muller, again, not a bad driver by any stretch, but I think he is going to struggle. And 20th, it might be a little bit unfair, but I think he is going to be around that.
Lucas Di Grassi would do his best to drag this team up from the depths, will he? He finished last of all the full-time drivers anyway. Even Taylor Barnard outscored him. By far the worst season for Di Grassi. I'm not sure where he goes from here. Does he leave Formula E, hold on at Abt Cupra, or hope another team picks him up and gives him a better car? Nico Müller, by comparison, had a great season. 12th overall, and he scored at the last 4 races. He did his best to make up for Degrassi. I got Abt Cupra right, but 8 more points for Degrassi and 8 for Müller.
8th, Mahindra, with Nick De Vries 19th and Eduardo Mortara 13th. Mahindra are a midfield team. They've always been a midfield team. They will be a midfield team again. And I think Nick De Vries is going to find this a lot harder than when he was driving for Mercedes. As for Eduardo Mortara, he has been a fantastic driver over the years, putting in some very special performances, being a major surprise with Venturi for a couple of years. But he had a tough year with Maserati last year, and he's going to have a tough year with Mahindra this year. He's going to beat his teammate, and he's going to be lower end of the midfield. But it's not the Mortara of old, which is a little disappointing, but I think Mahindra, they tend to be around this spot, so I think it's probably fair.
Nope, a lot worse for Mahindra, who round up 10th. They didn't even score points until the 9th race of the year. I was almost spot on with De Vries, just 1 place out, and it was a very tough year. In his defence, he was knocked out of point scoring positions on a couple of occasions, and despite finishing behind his teammate, I think overall he was better than Mortara. Eduardo Mortara has been a title contender in the past. This was his worst ever Formula E season. Add on another 6 points, but I was close on this one.
7th, McLaren, with Jake Hughes 17th and Sam Bird 11th. This team I'm a little bit worried about because McLaren, they could finish a lot higher. Sam Bird is a very capable driver, but again, last couple of years he seems to really struggle. He took out his teammate Mitch Evans at Jaguar, I think 3 or 4 times last year. It got a little bit embarrassing. I'm not surprised that he left Jaguar for another team. McLaren could do a lot worse than him, but this is not, again, the Sam Bird of old. He has struggled for results the last couple of years. As for Jake Hughes, I was very harsh on him last year. I did not expect a lot from him, and he did better than I thought. He did get a couple of pole positions. He was at the front of the field a lot, but he tended to drop down the fields during the races. And again, I'm just not really expecting much from him. He is a very mediocre driver. So, 17th, but he could surprise. Sam Bird, again, 11th. Honestly, he could go either way.
Again, spot on for the team, but a few places out on both drivers. Not a terrible prediction. And Jake Hughes has driven a lot better than the results he ended up with. He ran at the front multiple times and even finished second at Shanghai. Sam Bird did take a win, but was again involved in a few incidents this year. Breaking his hand and missing a few races also didn't help his cause. It was a mediocre season for McLaren, but it maybe wasn't quite as bad as I thought it would be. They left a lot of points on the table. That's something worth remembering for 2025.
6th, Maserati, with Jehan Daruvala 16th and Maxi Gunter 7th. This might seem really harsh on Jehan Daruvala, but as he is debuting in the series and he is the only driver in the field debuting in Mexico, it's going to be really hard for him. He's been racing in Formula 2 for the last 3 or 4 years. This is a different kettle of fish. I see mistakes coming, and I think he will struggle in his first year with Maserati, who are not an entirely stable outfit. They got better as the year went on, but there's no guarantee they're going to be there at the start of 2024. Maxi Gunter, I think, will have a good year. He put in some real surprise performances last year. I was really impressed by the German. I've been impressed by him for many years. He had a couple of bad years in between his time at BMW and Maserati, but especially the back half of last year, Gunter was excellent. So I think he will have an excellent year this year as well. Maybe a couple of wins, but I don't see him really being in championship contention.
I wasn't harsh enough about Jehan Daruvala. He has been dreadful. He needs another season to be sure, but it wasn't just a case of getting used to the car and the management side of Formula E. He was just bad. 21st instead of 16th, and he's lucky he wasn't last. Maxi Gunter, on the other hand, was pretty good. I was almost spot on. He did take a win and wasn't quite in title contention. I was only 1 place out. It's going to be really interesting seeing what he does at DS Penske next year, coming off the back of his 2 best ever Formula E seasons with Maserati. Overall, not bad, but another 8 added to the score.
5th, Envision, with Sebastian Buemi 10th and Robin Freins 8th. I think this is going to be another good year for Envision, but nowhere near their championship winning year of 2023 where they took the team's title. Buemi has not been the Buemi of championship winning fame for a long time. He's had some torrid years with Nissan, and he wasn't perfect with Envision last year, but there was improvement on show. Again though, he's going to be favouring his Toyota drives with the World Endurance Championship. I'm not entirely sure if this means he's going to miss a few races here, but I do think Buemi's going to have a decent year. Frines is usually incredibly consistent, and he finishes most races, so I'm banking on him doing better than his teammate, but I don't really see either driver being in title contention, and I think Envision are weaker without Nick Cassidy.
I was one place out on all of these, so that's unbelievable. No wins, but they did grab 5 podiums between them. Not much to say about it really. They were never up with the title contenders. They were the best of the midfield. They did okay. All 3 drivers were okay. It was an okay season for Envision.
4th, Andretti with Norman Nato 12th and Jake Dennis 4th. So last year's champion, Jake Dennis, fantastic driver. It was incredible to see him take the championship last year. I just think some of the manufacturer teams are going to come on stronger this year, and it's going to make his job infinitely more difficult, but I'm sure he will be up there again. 4th might be a little harsh. I would say I do think he'll be in title contention at the end, and it could be one hell of a year to see who's going to be champion, but I do think 4th for Jake Dennis. Norman Nato is a decent driver. He'll be a points hoover for Andretti. I don't think he'll match Dennis, but he might fight for the odd podium here and there, and I think he'll just miss out on the top 10, but I don't think that's a bad thing on him at all, and he is another one who could entirely surprise me and finish in the top half.
Jake Dennis was a bit of an enigma this year. He started the year on par with his championship winning campaign and ended it like his DTM career. The 4 or 5 crashes he was involved in at the final round do a much better job of summing up his season than I can. Norman Nato was pretty hopeless as well. Didn't see much of him unless he was crashing, so a few places out for Nato, a few for Dennis, but only 1 place out in the manufacturers. Really, it was Jake Dennis who let the side down in 2024.
3rd, DS Penske with Stoffel Vandoorne 9th and Jean-Eric Vergne 3rd. Honestly, this is probably the strongest driver lineup in terms of overall talent, but it was more of a midfield year, and he does seem to get caught out in a few instances here and there, whereas Jean-Eric Vergne tends to glide through the field if he's somewhere in the midfield. Last year it kind of went against him. He had a run of bad results that really put him out of title contention. This year I think he's going to come on a lot stronger. The double champion, I think he's going to be right up there. It's going to be close, but I think he is going to finish 3rd overall. Vandoorne, again, he's another driver who I could be completely wrong about and he could have an amazing year, but I think 9th is a good representation of where Vandoorne will finish.
9th is definitely not a bad representation of where Vandoorne will finish, whatever that means. He finished 10th. DS Penske did indeed finish 3rd, and I'm kind of surprised because they didn't feel like a 3rd place team. Yes, Jean-Eric Vergne was around the top for most of the year. I just can't point out any really good DS Penske performances. No wins, but they were incredibly consistent all year. Another team I was pretty close on.
2nd, Porsche with Antonio Felix da Costa 5th and Pascal Wehrlein 2nd. Yeah, Porsche are very difficult to place because honestly, on paper I think they'll be champions, but I just can't give it to them because they've kind of been bottle jobs in the past, and I think they'll be bottle jobs again in 2024. Pascal Wehrlein did lead the championship at one point in 2023. I think after Cape Town he had a crash there. It all started to go a bit downhill. He had his moments later on in the series, but he kind of had already thrown away his title chances. Porsche, I think, are much stronger than they have been, and they will come good eventually, but I don't think it'll be in 2024. I think we're just going to miss out. Antonio Felix da Costa is a great driver, former champion, but he doesn't have the consistency of Wehrlein. I think he's not going to be too far behind his teammate, but he is going to be somewhere behind him. And so I think Wehrlein is the one who's going to have the better year and a real title challenge.
And by real title challenge, I meant winning the championship. Great year for Porsche, taking the Drivers' Championship, but 2nd, just like I said they would be in the Team's Championship. Despite taking 4 wins, Antonio Felix da Costa only finished 6th, and that's because he failed to finish far too many races, and that cost Porsche the championship. They took 7 of 16 wins and still didn't win the Team's Championship. I was only 1 place out on both drivers, and I got Porsche's place right, so that's just 2 points, and I know I got something right for our last one.
1st, Jaguar with Nick Cassidy 6th and Mitch Evans 1st. I have called Jaguar and Mitch Evans winning Formula E several times now, and honestly, I'm just going to keep doing it until it happens, because the one year I don't, he's guaranteed to win.
I'm actually considering blackmailing him. Give me £2,000 and tickets to Formula E in London, or I'm just going to keep predicting you to finish first, Mitch.
I think they have the driver lineup to score the points this year, but I think Nick Cassidy's going to have a tough year, because early on in the season, he's going to have to go over the disappointments of last year. I think that's going to affect him. Get used to being in a new team as well with a new car. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a bit of a learning curve, and I think he's going to lose out to Mitch Evans in the first half of the year, and then improve in the second half of the year. And I could be completely wrong about that, and Nick Cassidy might end up as champion, but I'm going for 6th. I think it's going to be at least the first 4 or 5 races. It's going to be tough for him. Mitch Evans, I want this to be his year. I think it'd be nice to see him as champion. It'd be nice to see Jaguar at the top. So that's my prediction for 2024. Mitch Evans and Jaguar.
Jaguar finally win the championship. After years and years of predicting it, it finally happened. And yet neither driver could win the Drivers' Championship. They came close. Mitch Evans missing the attack mode was heartbreaking and gift-wrapped the title for Pascal Wehrlein. Nick Cassidy blew it in the last 4 races, spinning whilst leading at Portland, damaging his wing in the other Portland race, qualifying at the back in London and then getting a puncture in race 2. He had all the bad luck in the world, and it was actually the start of the season where he really excelled. Still, better luck next year, Jaguar. Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy will return, and we go again in 2025. So, they were my predictions from back in January for Formula E. Can you believe how high that number got? I actually didn't get a single driver right this year, but I did correctly predict 6 teams. There's always next year, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that or any other motorsport content coming out in the future. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did the series go as you predicted? Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.